The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. My friend Dave Dameshek is here. He's in the studio. He's not on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. He is here to talk about hockey and basketball and all kinds of stuff. And we went for so long that we went two parts. We're recording this after the fact. Dave, thanks for going two parts.
I'm sorry, you and I both long-winded.
Verbose. Anyway, here's part one. A somber BS Report. I have one very unhappy sports fan here. I jinxed all the Boston teams on Thursday night by deciding to do a live chat on ESPN.com while a Red Sox, Bruins, and Celtics game were all going on. 0 for 3. And now I'm getting blamed. I might not be able to show my face to the city of Boston again, but I do have one happy sports fan with me, my friend Dave Dameshek, whose Pittsburgh Penguins are headed to the finals, but it feels a little tainted, doesn't it? You're going against Carolina, and
I wouldn't go so far as to say tainted, but yes. First of all, as I said to you yesterday, very noble of you to forego the sports fan in you and just to sit in front of the TV in solitude and instead share the experience with your droves of fans.
I won't do it again. It was a one-time thing.
I hope you enjoyed it. And by the way, several people dropped me a line to point out that the sports guy was disparaging Dameshek on his little chat last night.
I just said if it was Bruins Pens, I think we would have gone at it. I would have pulled your shirt over your head. Here's the thing. Here's how you know Gary Bettman is the worst commissioner of all time. He could have had Wings Hawks, Penguins Bruins.
I know it, man.
It's the greatest Final Four they could have had.
Absolutely.
Actually, maybe Pittsburgh Rangers. I don't know. Pittsburgh Rangers, Pittsburgh Bruins, whatever.
Well, I mean, the number one seed Bruins, the best team in the Wales Conference all season long, against the most marketable team in the league with Kid Crosby and Geno Malkin. And then on the other side, like you say, the Hawks and Wings. So essentially, one half of the original six and the high-flying Pittsburgh Penguins.
And your number one team.
Listen,
and you also have Bruins Penguins. You have some real history from the early 90s that, they could show Neely in the box, then maybe Ulf Samuelsson goes to a game. And it's delicious. It's just great. And
it would have been fantastic. Yeah,
Penguins Hurricanes is such a dud. It sucks.
Well, we'll see what happens. There are a couple of interesting storylines. The one thing that's going to just be beaten to death is the fact that Jordan and Eric Stahl are brothers, and they're now going head-to-head in this one. I think the more compelling storyline is the NFL tie-in, the NFL coaches tie-in. Coach Tomlin now of the Steelers goes to the games, not only goes to the games, but wears a Penguin sweater when he's there. In the meantime, the man who preceded him, Coach Cowher, now living down in North Carolina, attends all the Canes games.
Oh, no.
And I guess they have some siren that is played before the game, like some, hurricane warning siren.
Right.
And they have local celebrities come and churn it and to get the crowd riled up. Coach Cowher went and did this, I guess, a week or two ago.
How dare he?
How dare he indeed? And then when asked about if he's keeping his eye on his, let's understand, Coach Cowher didn't just coach the Steelers for 15 years. He's born and bred.
Yeah, the fabric.
He's raised. He's a Pittsburgher. Yeah. He basically said, I don't want to talk about the Penguins. I'm not into that. I'm into the Canes.
It's kind of like
outrageous.
It's kind of like if I had built my presence as the Boston sports guy and then moved to L.A. But then went to the Lakers and Kings game and rang cowbells and stuff.
Yeah, I'll tell you what.
It's terrible.
I think you and I have talked about this maybe on your podcast, but either way, I think the greatest misdeed that was somehow embraced by the Boston population actually was Raymond Bourque. I never understood. Have we talked about this?
Yeah, well, it's like you have to understand where we were psychologically, though. It would have been, Len Bias and Reggie Lewis died, the Buckner game, and it's just this. It was this spiral of hell, and it was so bad that we we felt good that Raymond Bourque won the cup somewhere else.
That's how bad I would feel empty if I were Raymond Bourque. First of all, you go and play with a group of strangers for a few months, and suddenly that's gratifying.
No, I think he admits it now. I mean, I think he liked winning, but I think if he had to do it over again, I'm not sure he would have done it again.
Yeah, better to go. If it were up to me, I would just go my entire career with.
Well, here's the issue: we had such a cheapskate owner, and this is why people don't fully understand why I abandoned hockey, and there were other reasons, but the main reason was the owner. But to watch this guy who was the best defenseman of his entire era, and we didn't win a cup literally because on the third, fourth line, fifth, sixth defenseman, it was like, oh, we'll save money there. No, you can't do that when you're trying to win a cup. And we wasted this guy's prime. Mm-hmm. And then by the mid-late 90s, he was just stuck on these bad teams, or not bad teams, but teams that you knew weren't going to win. And at some point it was like, all right, we have to free Raymond. Mm-hmm. We have to free him. It's like Free Willy. You got to let him out.
Well, one of the great moments in sports history, as far as I'm concerned, of our lifetime, a little underrated too, a little under the radar, was when Raymond Bourque when they were retiring Phil Esposito's
It's
sweater.
Fantastic.
The number 7.
So good. The look on Espo's face.
Raymond Bourque was wearing the number 7 to that point in his career. He pulls off the number 7 sweater, gives it to Espo, and reveals that from this point forward, a future Hall of Famer will be wearing 77. I thought that was a fantastic thing.
Well, I'll tell you, the hockey's kind of been sucking me back. I even wrote my magazine column about this week. And it's happened for a lot of reasons. I think they've made some shrewd rule changes.
Definitely. It's a much more engaging sport.
The HD really helps.
Absolutely.
Really, really helps.
Yes.
The chippiness is back. They can deny it all they want, but it's back. Mm-hmm. And it's just, there's nothing like it. And then you compare it to the NBA where the referees literally decide every game, for better or worse. They have such sway and control over what happens. And the NHL, you look at last night, now, there's a perfect scenario where they could have rigged that game for the Bruins. Bettman could have called down before the overtime.
But why didn't he? Isn't it like you say? Absolutely, that would have been the best.
But that's one of the great things about hockey is you get into overtime. I mean, the Bruins they mugged the Canes a couple times. There was a couple plays in front of the net where guys just getting taken down from behind. And the refs just aren't going to decide the game. They're going to let the players do it, and they do it, and Carolina deserved to win. They dominated the last 10 minutes. They dominated the overtime. Mm-hmm. And it usually works out. The NBA, for some reason, they haven't found that balance.
Well, I do want to talk NBA ball and specifically get your thoughts on Kobe and his pals and what's going on with them against Houston. But quickly, let's fix the NHL. I think between the two of us, and I know you're in the midst of pursuing the GM gig with the T-Wolves.
No, I think the NHL is so easily fixable.
I agree completely.
I
don't
really
know why.
Like 5 tweaks.
You have the juice, though. Dameshek doesn't have the juice.
No, but they need new commissioners, one, because it's like at some point you've burned out your fans on whatever your brand is.
Right.
And it's almost like, you take I don't know, like a soda or a chips, or like when Baked Lays, they come out with new bags. Mm-hmm. It's basically the same Baked Lays, but the bag looks cool. It's like, oh, Baked Lays, I think I'll check these out. That's what you got to do with the commissioner. It could be the Corolla theory of the 1780s blacksmith-looking guy, the 6'5" guy with the facial hair and the chain in front and a great handshake. He doesn't even have to actually run the league. Just make me feel, you know what I mean?
I hear you.
It's a subtle change that would work.
Yeah, I like that.
What if they made Gretzky commissioner?
Well, how about that? Listen, look what he's done with the Phoenix Coyotes.
Yeah, that's probably a bad example.
Why is that your go-to?
No, or Lemieux or whoever, somebody, or Bobby Orr, somebody who
you could
has
get away
cachet with the fans, who they're going to be very forgiving with.
Here's one nice little change you make right out of the gate. It's purely aesthetic, but it still would be cool. We've talked about before. In our childhood, one of the cool things that they took away was the names of the division. Something that was unique about hockey versus everything else were the division names. You used to have the Smythe and the Norris and
the John
Patrick.
Adams division.
That's
wasn't
fantastic.
John Adams, but whatever. Yeah.
Now it's more engaging now because it's called the Eastern Conference instead of the Wales. What kind of hooey and applesauce? Oh, yes, people, of course, will be lured to the sport now with that change. Why
did they do that?
Because apparently, I talked to Bettman before about it, and that's his explanation is that it makes it more accessible somehow. I mean, well, it's ludicrous to say that, but so how about this? Inspired by that, I dig Patrick and Smythe and those, but instead, along the lines of what you just said, what about you change it to the Lemieux Conference and the Gretzky Conference, and you have the Orr division, and you honor more recent superstars?
You're like the only one who thinks Lemieux is in that class. You really
stop
are.
it.
No, you really are.
Well, listen.
You really are. Like, you undermine your own cause with asinine statements like that.
That's not true at all. At least
So
he's
you're
certainly
saying,
in the top.
You're saying Lemieux should have the
top
conference
2 or 3.
over Bobby Orr, the greatest defenseman of all time.
Listen, let's not split
Everyone
hairs.
could say,
the general idea.
if they have
well,
arthroscopic surgery in the 70s, this guy plays for 20 years and breaks every record ever.
Listen.
I would say the Orr conference and actually, I'd put Gordie Howe ahead of Lemieux, too.
Oh, stop.
This guy played for 30 years. He played with his sons, for God's sakes. Can you imagine, like, Larry Bird playing with his sons in the Celtics? Like, how crazy was that? He's fighting at age 50.
Yeah, absurd. But listen.
Well, how many teams do you want to get rid of?
I think that it seems like an ironic move, but if they would embrace the fact that they are a regional sport and get rid of teams like Phoenix, Dallas does well.
Well, exactly what teams? Because Phoenix needs to go.
The Florida teams.
I don't think we need an LA team and an Anaheim team.
No, you get rid of.
Get rid of LA?
No, you keep the Kings. They've been around for.
Well, the Ducks draw though. Can't get rid of the Ducks.
I know, but again, I know the NFL has gotten by without having a team in Los Angeles, but the NHL needs to keep the Kings where they are. But you could get rid of the Ducks. I think that it's a little bit of an illusion.
It's a little callous.
I think they have 18,000. I think the 18,000 people that fill their building to watch their games are the 18,000 people who care about them in Southern California. I don't think there are many people who really care much about them.
Definitely Phoenix and Tampa.
Yes, probably Florida. Maybe the Canes. I might. Yeah,
but the Canes do. They're another team that draws. I would get rid of the Islanders. How many years in a row can
Thrashers go.
Atlanta.
Nashville Predators go. Move teams to Seattle. Seattle. I mean, what town? You keep hearing about different places. Kansas City has an arena ready to go. They want a team.
Yeah,
but they should.
Do that.
It would be great. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that doesn't get you anything, I don't think.
Well, what about the Islanders? We can't get rid of them? That team's been struggling since I was like a little kid.
Yeah, move them. Well, they may, who knows if they'll go. What would be great is, baseball thrived in the 50s for the Dodgers, Giants, and Yankees all playing in the Mecca in New York. Why not do the same thing? The equivalent of that in hockey terms is Toronto. To put 2 teams in Toronto. Hamilton is essentially a suburb there. Everybody wants a team in Hamilton. That would be great.
Well, that was so funny when that story came out. Bettman's like, no, we're not doing it. And you're thinking, Toronto's your hub. Toronto should have 2 teams. I would even say Montreal maybe could carry 2 teams. Ottawa could have 2 teams. Like, the Knicks and the Nets have survived together in the NBA. The Giants and the Jets have survived together in the NFL. You have a huge city, put
Cubs,
2 teams
White
there.
Sox, yeah, the list goes on and on. Yeah, it would make it would be great for the sport. And like I said, I think it just comes down to something to do with Bettman's ego, right? Doesn't it just feel like I'm not going to concede defeat? My focus has been on spreading the sport to the south.
Right.
Listen, just forget about it and move those teams up north. Put the teams in Canada. Like I say,
24?
Seattle. Who would appreciate it more than Seattle right now? They'd go gaga for any professional sport.
Yeah, I think Canada is the key. How many teams are in Canada now? Like 7?
It's not that many anymore.
Maybe even be 5 or 6?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, put a
they
couple.
Should have 12.
Winnipeg,
12.
Hamilton. Yeah, that'd be great. I think
what
that
we
would
need
make
is,
the popularity return a little bit.
I've said this a million times. 24 teams, 12 and 12. 12 American.
I like this idea.
12 Canadian. Screw it. Let's just go through the teams. I have them online.
All right.
So, we're keeping Boston.
Of course.
Keeping Washington.
Sure.
New Jersey.
They really, to me, I've said it before, I say it again, their cup in 1995 is the most detrimental single championship in any major sport of our lives. When they won that clutch and grab nonsense, skillless hockey.
But it's over now. They got rid of it.
They did, but I'll tell you, these Carolina Hurricanes are Devil South. That's exactly what the Penguins have in store for them coming up here. I hate that kind of hockey. It's terrible.
It's reminiscent of what cocaine did to the NBA in the early 80s.
Yes.
It almost took a decade to get rid of all the damage. All right, so you're getting rid of New Jersey? Did they sell out?
They have a new building there. I mean, listen, can we do whatever we want? They have a brand new building there in Newark. So
let's keep them for now. Okay. Pittsburgh, keeping.
Let's keep them. All right, good.
Because it'll destroy you emotionally. Philly got to stay.
Yeah.
Carolina, I got to say, after
Philly,
the Bruins,
best uniforms of teams I hate. Right? That black and orange, that's a handsome.
Great fans, just surly and mean.
Yeah.
Philly we're keeping. Carolina I'm going to keep for now just because they sold out and their fans cheered for 3 hours. You got to hand it to them.
They're a little bit of front running. There's a little front running going on.
It's fine. Rangers, Montreal, obviously keeping. Florida out. Buffalo.
Oh, Buffalo, you got to keep. Talk about spectacular fans.
Ottawa, Toronto keeping. Atlanta, Tampa Bay, and the New York Islanders. So long. San Jose.
Wow. Quick cuts.
Yeah, quick cuts.
The Sharks do well. Great building.
Detroit, Vancouver.
Joe Thornton just lets them down every postseason.
He did that to us too. San Jose, Detroit, Vancouver, Chicago, all keeping. Calgary, keeping.
Oh yeah, that's another dedicated fan base. Can't get rid of them.
St. Louis.
Oh yeah, the Blues. You're going to do that to your boy John Hamm?
I like St. Louis.
Yeah.
Columbus. I'm sorry, it's ridiculous that you have a team you're out.
Stop! Why you don't like Columbus? I think that's kind of cool. I love the name Blue Jackets.
We got to make some.
All
right, I'll put
you're right.
There,
what? You're practicing tough love. When you're right, you're right.
I'll put them on the fringe. Anaheim.
I say good day.
Let's keep them in.
Here's what
now.
I know about Anaheim. When they won the Cup a couple of years ago, they had to, if one of your teams wins, if one of my teams win, and they have a big celebration, they, 500,000 or 1 million people show up for it. The Anaheim Ducks actually had to lure people to their celebratory parade with free hot dogs and soda pop.
All right, there.
And the governor
Say
showed
no
up
more.
for it.
You're gone, Anaheim. Minnesota.
The Wild, love the uniforms. Worst name in all of sports, bar none. The
Awful.
Wild.
I still think
they do well, though. They do well.
I hate the Miami Heat the most. Nashville.
No, they're gone.
Edmonton, Dallas, we keep. Yeah. Phoenix is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then Colorado stays. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in the East. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in the West. So we do have room for one more team.
Well, we'll blend all of the remaining teams together, and we'll put them in Hamilton or Winnipeg or Seattle. That's all.
Maybe we keep the Islanders, but we move them.
That's it. That's right.
We move them to Toronto, and they become
the Hamilton. They can no longer be the Islanders. We don't want a Lakers.
No.
We don't want a Utah Jazz
situation. Can't have islands
situation.
in Canada.
No, yes, we're not going to stand for that sort of thing.
So we make the Islanders the what?
The Hamilton. We have to come up with their name right now too.
How about the Hamilton Alley Cats?
Okay.
Thank you.
Interesting.
So that gives us not enough Canadian teams unless we move some franchises. But what about this? Why not just put all the Canadian teams in the West?
All right.
Or is that too weird because Montreal is close to Boston? I guess you can't do that. No, yeah,
you don't want to destroy some of those great natural rivals.
All right, well, this is good. We're down to 24, and we're moving the Islanders to Hamilton. Mm-hmm. We've solved this. How easy was that? That took 4 minutes.
Yes, that's terrific. Then we shrink the goalie pads. That's the biggest thing of all the things. The goalie pads, if you haven't seen the difference, look up online if you get a chance. Mid-'80s. You don't have to go way back when they weren't wearing masks. Look at in the mid-'80s, the size of the goalie pads versus the way they look now. They look absurd. When they take their masks off, they look like the Michelin Man with a little head on put on the top of it. It's ridiculous how oversized those are. So
well, goalies could fight with their pads back then. Nowadays, trying to fight with goalie pads on you have a better chance like fighting in quicksand.
Yeah. It's
like lugging around 2 Michelin blimps.
Then we get back to, and then we got to go back to the white sweaters at home, so we can see the glorious sweaters.
Now explain. We watched a Pens game this weekend. You tried to explain to me why they did that.
Well, according to Barry Melrose, apparently the league is going to do that every 20 years or so. They're going to, because way back when the home team wore the colored sweater, and so one of the owners said we should really give a treat to the local fans and let them see the visiting team's colorful sweaters. But we already know what our team looks like. We'll just put them in white, and then that went over big in the NHL in general. They got to get rid of that. It looks terrible. I have a hard time. Who are they trying to engage? The people who watched the sport 100 years ago, who have all since left the planet. You and I are the fans that they should be going after, right? They should be appealing to our sense of nostalgia when we grew up watching the sport. Therefore, they need to go back and make it as much like it was back in the 80s, in the glorious times of the Oilers and the Penguins and even those Rangers in '94.
It's really stupid. Put it this way.
So many mistakes. We could fix the sport.
If the NBA did that, everybody would be like, what are you doing? Stop.
Yeah.
With the NHL, it was like that the league was floundering so badly that this kind of happened, and there were so many other problems that this was just allowed to happen. Mm-hmm. But can you imagine if, like, the Lakers were playing home in blue? How dumb that would be? Or the Celtics in green?
Yeah, it looks terrible. And, again, I just think they don't want to reverse their decisions and look worse for being wishy-washy on things.
I also think they need some sort of mid-season tournament that results in some sort of advantage for the playoffs. Like if you win or if you make the finals in your tournament, you get 5 home games instead of 4 for round 1, something like that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah.
There's got to be some way to.
It's just a shame. Listen, the most glorious trophy in all of sports is the Stanley Cup. And, in the last few years, it's the last decade or so, it's been sullied. I mean, keep in mind that they etch your name into it for all of time into the cup. It says Beliveau. It says Orr. It says Lemieux on the cup. That's great. And now it's been sullied by things like it now says on it lightning and hurricanes, and now you can't take that away. Now those things are etched into the cup for all of time. It's just a bad decision after bad decision.
Well, my puppy just crashed our podcast.
Yeah, there she is.
How do are they just going to keep adding to the cup forever? How's that going to work?
I don't know. It's a good question. Are they eventually going to have to remove the original winners of the cup? I know they added an extra ring to it a little while ago. I once drank from the cup.
What do you mean you once drank from the cup?
I drank from the cup. I'll tell this story, but then we got to move off of the puck a little bit here because this is going to be the worst rated podcast in Simmons history.
We'll split it up to 2 parts. I think we should solve hockey first.
Okay, all right, basketball. Very good. All right, well, listen. So in 1991, I am sitting in a bar in Pittsburgh in summertime with a few of my pals. It's late at night. It's closing time around 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's a 2-level bar. One, it has a roof deck, and so we're sitting up there, and the bartender says, "Hey, closing time. You guys are the last people up here. Please go downstairs, get out of here, start making your way out the door." And we were lingering, and then finally said, "Hey, if this entices you to get a move on, the Stanley Cup just got in downstairs." And we laughed at that, and then we went downstairs, and sure enough, there was at the time the color man for the Penguin broadcast, Paul Staggerwald, sitting on the bar next to him. Glorious. So brilliant, you almost couldn't look directly at it. The Stanley Cup sat there, sitting atop the bar.
Like the Pulp Fiction suitcase.
That's exactly what it was like. Yes, very much like that. And so we went up, we sidled up to the bar next to Staggy, and I got to talking to him. And I said, "Wow, the Stanley Cup, you bring it in here." Everybody associated with the team gets it for a couple of days. And also on the other side of the cup, a giant guy, a big bodyguard for the cup. Because,
cup bodyguard, nice.
Well, listen, obviously a lot of bad stuff has happened to the cup over the years, so now I guess they have to guard it full time. So we get to talking, and I say to Staggy, "Hey, would you mind?" And there are a total of 7 or 8 people in the bar at this point. It's like I say, 2:15 in the a.m. in Pittsburgh. So we say, "Hey, Staggy, what about maybe hoisting the cup up over our heads a little bit there?" And he said, "Sure, that's what it's all about, as long as it's all right with the bodyguard." He gave the okay. Next thing I knew, I was hoisting it up over my head. The cup that was held by 66 and Orr and Gretzky and everyone else, Rocket Richard, and it was up over my head. And my friends and I, we all took a turn. And then I said, "I'm going to push my luck a little bit. I'm going to go for broke here." And I said, "Hey, Staggy, what would you think about a little bit of beer going into that cup and us taking a sip from it?" He said, "Hey, if it's all right with the bodyguard, it's okay with me." Next thing I know, the bartender was pouring a pitcher of beer, Iron City beer no less, into that cup, and everybody left in the bar got into a line. We went through it. All the other patrons took one sip, and then my friends and I just basically kept doing kept cannonballing it until the beer was gone from the cup. But what a glorious evening that was.
I have a couple reactions. First of all, can you imagine how many people have drank out of the cup? It would almost be like, what was that game in college you play with the pitcher where you have to drink? Everybody drinks from the pitcher, and by the 4-hour mark, the pitcher, if you're going to get germs, you're going to get mutant forms of the germs.
Right.
You think the cup would almost be like I don't even know.
A receptacle for filth for decades worth.
Like a
filth.
Pandemic virus could emanate from the cup. But
that's just the sort of attention hockey needs right now.
But the bodyguard thing made me think of something. Can you imagine if hockey fans tried to kidnap the Stanley Cup.
Well, it's so funny because
and then held it hostage and demanded like $2 million ransom.
I swear our conversation that night and for weeks after was exactly that. Like, listen, who is going to be the guy who takes the bullet out of the four of us, who has to go and get the camera right now? Because no one's going to believe this story that we're drinking from the cup. Someone has to run and get a camera somewhere. And then we said, why should anyone have to miss out on this? Let's just make a run for it. And it's not to keep it forever. Our idea wasn't criminal as criminal as yours was. Ours was, we'll just keep it for the weekend, a long weekend.
And then give it back, get arrested.
Yeah, take pictures poolside and everything, then we'll return it. But yeah,
well, think about like
great.
Well, think about like the Louvre. They have like laser security and all this stuff to protect whatever paintings. The Stanley Cup. If you stole the Stanley Cup, like how people steal those paintings, then they just have them in their house, and it's like a $15 million Picasso or something. They do it just for them, to impress the 7 people they know.
Yeah, that's
true.
A
Picasso. You steal the cup?
That'd be a good story, right?
Like it's something like Kimmel would do. You're at Kimmel's new house. He's like, come up here, I got to show you something. He's got the Stanley Cup up there. I could see him doing that. He's a maniac.
That would be fantastic.
Now, if they made a movie out of this, it would definitely be like, it would probably turn out like Celtic Pride. Like, just terrible. It would be like the Hangover trailer. Like, these wacky guys steal the Stanley Cup. Bradley Cooper.
It's amazing you bring that up. Has there ever been a movie that, it's not like it's Star Trek or the next Batman or anything else, this random comedy, can you remember anything ever being promoted as far in front of its release as this one is?
With less star power.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be funny. Zach Galifianakis is as funny as it gets, but
I don't know.
Really, you're predicting?
I think Zach might have just been written a check for this one.
Maybe, but I'll be interested to see. And also, I can't think of his name.
I'll tell you something about
Ed
Zach.
Henry, is that his name? He's funny on The Office.
Let me tell you something about these too cool for school comedians. These holier than thou. Oh, I got to stay true to my comedy roots. I was at a restaurant called the SOS Hotel. Is a restaurant. We're sitting outside the patio, dinner. Zach Galifianakis having dinner with both Olsen twins.
Is that
and
right?
And 2 other people.
Wow.
And I was like, you too cool for school. Look at you now.
You know what? I'd like to ask the sports guy Simmons. Let me take a moment to. No one cares what I have to say. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on some things.
What are you talking about?
Nobody
cares what you have to say. You're a guest in the BS report.
No, I know. But I mean to say that people are always asking. Talk about celebrity this and that. People ask me, obviously you and I both know Kimmel and Carolla. More than anybody, people say, what's the sports guy's story? People from around the country ask me about you all the time, ask me questions about you, send me emails and stuff. First of all,
that's creepy.
What's your biggest celebrity run-in ever? Because I went, when I first moved out here, 4 days out here, I thought I'm going to see stars every day. And I was walking to my car, and walking on the other side of my car from me, just in the other direction, was Mel Brooks. And I was so stunned by it, I said, Mel Brooks, like that. And he said, hey, how you doing? And I said, I'm good. How are you? And he said, I'm good. And he just kept on walking. And I thought, well, this is going to happen all the time. And then I told you, I saw Sam Jackson and Aaron Eckhart in the span of about 11 seconds at the grocery store.
That's pretty good.
The other day. And but that was
But it's not fair, though, because we both worked for this talk show that had celebrities on.
I know, it's almost unfair to
use
use those. I mean, it's random run.
I think you have to go. Well, my greatest one ever, it was a Vegas trip, 1999. It's the first giant Vegas thing I ever wrote. It was called Viva Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. Back before the whole Vegas thing started. It was like a celebration of this guy's weekend. Had this amazing blackjack run. Just amazing. Like, we'd sucked all weekend and then just caught fire at Treasure Island. I'm up like $800, which was like, a mountain of money for me at the time because I was broke and we're betting like $15 a hand. We're upping it to 25. Like,
you're getting there the hard way, $15 at a time. Yeah.
Hard way. But really, like, upping it to 25, 50 a hand is like such a huge deal when you have no money. Go to the bathroom right near the end of this. Peeing at a urinal, I look over, and Undertaker is peeing right next to me.
Fantastic.
And I'm hammered. I have like 20 beers in me. I'm giddy. I've just won all this money, and we're just peeing. You're just peeing for 20 seconds, and I'm just like, I gotta say something. So that finally, I said, I think, I think I said, wow, I just won $800 and I'm taking a piss next to the Undertaker. It doesn't get any better than this. There's this silence. He walks away, starts walking away, zips up, walks away, and goes, sounds like it, and left.
Wow.
And I was like, this is it's my greatest. I've never been able to top it ever.
Yeah,
Plus he's
That's
like
gonna be tough
6'10".
Yeah.
But I was, the whole time I'm like, I can't sneak a peek. I don't want him to I'm like, just keep my head perfectly straight so he doesn't think, even though I'm not sneaking a peek, that I might have, or I don't know if he's going to put me in the tombstone. So it's just but that was my favorite one.
I've been having a lot of trouble of late. Maybe I'm
with celebrity interactions.
No, with the public bathrooms. I know you talked about what were you talking about with Corolla a little while ago? You got into some
we were talking
frat
about
house bathroom etiquette. Well, public bathroom etiquette. My big thing is how wide a berth one takes from the urinal. Really, it sets a bad tone for whoever follows you. That drives. First of all, I go into the urinal the other day, and what do I see in there but a chewed piece of gum thrown into the urinal? That's
no respect for the janitor.
No, it's not. And then the other thing is how wide. You gotta. I'm sorry, but listen, you gotta get close to the urinal. That's all there is to it. Because as you go back, because you don't want to tread in other people's urine.
Your junk's hanging out.
Right. Then then you have to take a step back. And then if you go back an extra foot, then the guy behind you has to go back an even further foot. The next thing you know, somebody's basically has to make a free throw length shot into the urinal. It's just not fair.
And for the old guys, really not fair because they have the prostate to pull that off.
No, they can't make that. Right.
On the same subject, we both have daughters.
Yes.
Yours is not as old as mine. Mine I take to the Staples Center. Mm-hmm. She's going to have to go to the bathroom at some point.
Ooh, yeah, tough call.
It's not. There's no call. You got to take your daughter into the men's bathroom because I can't go into the women's one.
Sure.
And I don't know. Something feels wrong about it.
Oh, yeah.
We're coming out. She's kind of out of the corner of her eye seeing guys like zipping it up, and I'm like, there's got to be some sort of parent taking the opposite sex kid bathroom. Even if there's only one and there's a line for it, I'd much rather wait on that than have my daughter see people at a urinal.
Yeah, they really do need to get that. How has society made it this far with that being the way to go? I can't remember ever seeing a little girl being dragged into a filthy, stinking sporting bathroom.
Yeah, and of course she went 2 instead of 1, which was great.
Oh, no.
She's in there. She got a grunt.
Oh, no.
We come out of there. It's like,
no.
she's wearing her little cheerleader outfit. Like, it was really humiliating. Like a horse.
Oh, the poor dear.
It's the stuff, like, it's all the stories I'm going to remember for when she's 15 and she's starting to be mean to me, and I'm just going to rattle off these humiliating stories to bring her back down. But,
wow.
We've never figured out sports bathrooms. Because, like, for instance, the Gillette Stadium opened up, the Patriots Stadium. For whatever reason, they decide, well, gender, I guess like it's a Title IX urinal situation or Title IX bathroom. They put the same number of male and female bathrooms. Mm-hmm. Now, who goes to a football game?
Yeah, right.
It's like probably
90%. Well,
90% men.
And yet, somehow, the line for the ladies' room is always out the door.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here, Bill.
Wait a second. You're not allowed to jump in.
Oh, fine.
I will tell you when you can jump in.
Fine.
Jacqueline, what are your thoughts?
The line is really long at the NFL games for the bathroom, and there should be just as many because it just takes forever. It's my worst experience at Giants Stadium ever is when I have to use the restroom.
All right, well, here's what happened at the Gillette Stadium the first game. So many guys had to go to the bathroom that they just started saying screw it and going into the women's bathroom. So now you have basically a unisex bathroom.
Terrific.
And it was like a big nightmare. I mean, I don't know what the toilet per female customer ratio should be, but I still don't feel like we figured it out.
Well, let me just say, devil's advocate in the name of women, here's the worst thing, is the pregame around NFL stadiums, lots of tailgating going on, obviously. And if they don't, what they must do, and they don't do this everywhere, is provide men's and women's porta potties, outdoor urinals. Because if it's just unisex, poor women. I mean, that's just the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Because no man, here's the thing, no guy is going in there for two unless, you think like, it's like, yeah, I've had a lot to eat. I just want to clear some space kind of thing. It's not that sort of a train of thought. You're going in there out of desperation.
Yeah.
So you end up, I've fortunately never had to confront that myself, but I've gone in there and it's, it's a horrific mess. It's really just,
but women have, it's taught in women's school. Mm-hmm. You're taught how to basically pee in a porta potty without coming within a foot, right, Jacqueline?
I don't believe that was a class.
When is women's school? I didn't know if I have to enroll my daughter now.
No, it's a secret school they go to where they learn how to do all these things not to offend guys.
I must have been sick that day.
Well, so you would say it's a natural talent for women to be able to pee standing up, basically, in a porta potty?
I don't use a porta potty.
Oh, well, that's another way to do it.
That's what they teach you, not to use the porta potties outside the football stadiums.
Yeah, but if you're drinking for 8 hours, you got to use it.
I learned not to use it.
Dameshek.
Yes.
I have another idea for crowded men's bathroom. So you got the wall on either side. Why couldn't they just put like one of those urinal troughs all the way around the wall? So basically, you're waiting in line. You could just turn and pee if you want to.
Listen, I'm a fan of the trough.
Me too. I like the trough.
My old man has some aversion to it. In fact, he's declared no more sporting events that have a trough that is the place for you to make your water into.
We didn't cover one thing about hockey. I don't know how we got on urinals.
I don't know either.
There were 2 Game 7s last night. I mentioned this 47 times in my chat. 2 Game 7s head-to-head. They ran both of them simultaneously. The Bruins game ended after.
Right.
And basically, you had to have purchased a $79 NHL playoff package to see both games. Bettman should be fired for this decision alone.
I agree.
For this alone, you should be fired. You should lose your job. You're trying to gain back fans, and you do this. And you force people to spend basically what would be more than a higher price than going to the game. Indefensible.
It really is a shame to not put it on the biggest stage. And it's also a shame that you have – now, listen, it's not the opportunity that was missed. You talk about fixing games. In 1993, if the NHL were ever going to fix a finals, you had as your Final Four, you had the Florida Panthers, this soulless, historyless group, going against the Pittsburgh Penguins that had Lemieux and Yager and so on. On the other side, you have Gretzky's Kings go. I mean, I'm sorry, no, that's 93. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of 96. 96, It's Florida going against the Penguins. On the other side, you have the high-flying Detroit Red Wings, a great team with Yzerman and everybody else, going up against a talented but historyless Colorado Avalanche team. They had just moved there, so there's not really, there can't be any diehard fans by definition there. And instead of making sure that you get Wings versus Lemieux, instead you wind up with Florida versus Colorado. So many missed opportunities. Again, like you say, 93, that you could have had Lemieux versus Gretzky. What would that have done for the sport is really hard to calculate. It really would have been Jordan versus, I should say Bird versus Magic. You really think that could have done that? Now a lot of people are talking Ovechkin versus Kid Crosby this last fortnight or so. But you look at the ratings, and because it's on this fringy cable thing, very few people saw it. The College Baseball World Series, apparently, out last year on ESPN, outrated what Ovechkin versus Crosby did for the NHL. What a shame.
I wish ESPN, we have 3 channels, ESPN Classics, you would think they could have just reinvigorated that channel and just made it hockey, basically.
Well, it's one of those things where the league is in a position just in the short term. Shouldn't the league have said when the contract was up a couple of years ago, hey, listen, we'll give it to you. Don't worry about paying us for the rights to our league. Just take it, please. Show the games.
Yeah, but I still think it's going to come back. I think the strides they've made in the last 2 or 3 years are going to bring it back.
For all the things you got to change, you shrink the goalie pads and all the other aesthetic changes we're talking about. Legitimately, the thing that isn't as good about the sport is that now it's a lot more about jamming in front of the goal. The Wings are successful because they throw big guys right in the goal mouth there, and it's all about scoring goals from in tight. Listen, I love Kid Crosby. I think if you watch this series, Kid Crosby, you'd you don't know what you're looking at if you come away from it thinking anything other than this guy is the most determined superstar in sports. He works as hard as anybody.
Settle down.
Great speed, great
settle
skater.
down with the most determined superstar in sports.
Well, I mean, hard to be to work hard.
Kobe gets up at 5 a.m. and works out for 4 hours a day.
Right,
I would have to say at least.
I do want to talk to you about Kobe, but Kid Crosby. I mean, great, obviously, hand-eye coordination, great speed, great strength on the skates.
Couldn't they solve it, though? Couldn't they just do kind of what the NBA did with the charge circle and just make it like a bigger circle that you can't go into?
What it really is that the pads are so good now that really, I mean, not just on the goalies, but I mean on everybody, that it's easy to block shots. A generation ago, if you tried to block a shot from out at the point, someone's unloading the slapper, you wouldn't fling your body. I know it's always been a thing to try and get out there and block a shot, but you were much more heroic 20 years ago doing that. Now everybody does it. Everybody's willing to do it because the pads, it's weird. The technology now is so good that it doesn't hurt them to do it. And also the players are a little bit bigger. Remember when we were growing up, the average player was more like 6 feet tall. Now Zdeno Chara is 6'9", but they're a lot more big guys. There's a lot more length in the game, sticks and everything, easy to get, sticks on shots and block those shots. That hurts the sport. There's not as much, there aren't many.
It's not a killer though. It's fixable.
Yeah, but I mean, Ovechkin is a little bit of a rarity that he's a force of nature. He gets into the offensive zone. He can snap off that wrister from anywhere on the ice and beat you, but not many guys do that.
I was saying to you this weekend, we were watching it was like Game 4, Game 5, that it's really too bad Ovechkin isn't French or German. I think it would push him to another level. His name was Alexander Lafleur, and he was just this badass French guy. We'd all hate him. He'd be like Cobra Kai.
But listen.
The Russian thing makes him more
likable. I think he's easy. Maybe I'm biased, but he's pretty easy to dislike. He is. Yeah. You want hyperbole out of me. I say the most determined superstar. Here's the most villainous superstar, Ovechkin, since Mark Messier. And I'm not talking about hockey. I'm talking about in any sport. Superstar who just plays it dirty and is unlikable in general with that jumping around all the time after every goal. It's
great. He's like out of a bad sports movie.
Yeah,
I love
exactly
him.
Right.
I really enjoyed the Caps Pen series. I tried to watch as much of it as I could without paying the $79 that I finally had to pay anyway. Here's my fundamental problem with hockey. Is that it's a relatively simple sport to predict. Like, I'm watching last night, and it basically comes down to next goal wins. And they have a better goalie than we do. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like time and time again, all this other BS aside, and this guy, and this line, and this checking line, and this superstar, and it just freaking comes down to which goalie's better. Tim Thomas lost the game yesterday because
that's not true.
That little shot into the thing, he didn't catch it. It popped out, and the guy scored. Cam Ward would have caught it.
That was terrible. But
But Tim Thomas is not as good as Cam Ward, and it came down to whoever scored won, and Tim Thomas couldn't stop the goal.
You're sort of right. I am
right.
The glass half full way of looking at that is, though, you're in Game 7 in overtime. The bounce of the puck and your season is over is pretty exciting. But I know what you're saying, but I think that's simplistic. I think people always say that. Like, for instance.
But it's true. I mean, I'm a Bruins fan. Dormant, admittedly, for the last whatever. It's coming back. But they haven't won a cup since 1972. I cannot think of one time that we had a goalie catch fire. I mean, the closest was like Gilles Gilbert in 1979. And he ended up falling apart in Game 7. But we haven't had that goalie that just was standing on his head stopping saves. We've gone against that goalie like 6-7 times. We've never had it.
Yeah.
But it's just like time and time again. It's the freaking goalie.
It's sort of true because my answer to you is I have 2 words for you. Chris Osgood. He might win his 4th cup. Is he a legendary stand on his head netminder? No.
He's better than Tim Thomas.
I don't know about that. Tim Thomas.
I mean, how do you feel about Mike Richter?
Mike Richter was good. He was not, the best goalie in the league at any point.
I think you can win with a goalie like that. But if he goes against somebody who's superior and the teams are relatively equal, that's it. Swings it.
I really
didn't feel like we were going to score last night.
I think for all the talk about Marty Brodeur, the greatest goalie of all time, people are talking about that. He's a product of his system more than anything else.
Who was your goalie during the '66 era?
Tommy Barraza. Yeah, I mean he good, but
good, not great.
good. Yeah, didn't.
Did you ever go against a hot goalie that shut you down during that stretch?
I guess Eddie Belfour was red hot going into the '92 finals, and the Pens took care of him in '66 in particular took care of him by the end of Game 1 and turned that around.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying if you have more talent and it's significant, you're going to win. I'm just saying, like, a situation like last night, and every team is basically, they've cut it down. How do they just cut it down to 5 or 6 guys in OT? I was chatting about it last night. Like, Samsonov, this guy who should be washed up, who was waived by the Blackhawks and cut by Montreal or whatever, lands on the Hurricanes, like, oh, yeah, well, we need a body. Let's get Samsonov. Plays basically the entire third period and overtime.
Wow,
it was unbelievable. How do these guys get energy to suddenly do that? I want to test his urine.
Yeah, well, they usually start seeing the guys who really haven't been on the ice the whole all the regulation suddenly getting a lot of ice time, and once you get into the second overtime, that's what we really haven't seen yet. You wouldn't get that with the Pens and Caps the way those two teams score, but what I thought was going to be fantastic watching the Bruins and Canes. It looked like, oh, we're going to double overtime, and when you're in Game 7, as you start to really get deep into the game, once you get into double overtime, it's even more exciting. So yeah, I was disappointed when Scott Walker. By the way, I wanted the Bruins to win, for the record. And here's another question for you. Because I would always, if things are even in my head, I always root for the city that has a real history with its teams. I would rather see the Bruins go deep.
It's an original. You're always going to root for original six or a team that's won a few cups.
But a lot of people were asking me what would my bet be with you, and I said, listen, I'm invested with great passion in this.
Yeah, you're a much bigger fan than I am.
But would we have made a bet?
I mean, we would have. But it would have meant more to you. I mean, it's no comparison. I'm just coming back. I still have the scars of the Jacobs era that I'm still trying to figure out what to do with. But
when we, last spring when it was Celtics and Lakers on my show, we had the Celtics fan and the Lakers fan make a little mustache bet, and they had to, if the Lakers had won, the Celtics fan would have had to grow the Kurt Rambis mustache, and as it turned out, A. Martinez, a Latino, so it looked extra bad on him, had to grow the Larry Bird mustache, meaning he had to grow the cheesy Tom Selleck style mustache.
Why are you accenting the second part of mustache?
Mustache?
Why are you calling it mustache?
I don't know. I like that. Mustachio. No?
What are you talking about?
But we would have made a mustache bet. Except maybe it wouldn't be a mustache bet. Maybe it would be I would make you grow Kid Crosby's scraggly, pubescent beard that he tries to bring in.
Well, I owe Matt Berry a Fu Manchu from our fantasy hoops league.
You didn't pay that off yet?
I'm kind of in the embryonic stages of growing.
How long do you have to keep it?
I don't know. We haven't figured
Fu Manchu. I got to tell you, from the outside looking in, the Fu Manchu is the cool mustache. That's it. You got off easy. Yeah, now, if you really were to be tormented, like I say, you don't get to go. You don't get to go down the sides there. Just the cheeseball Chicago cop style mustache is what you should.
How great would that Carolina Boston have been if it had been Boston Hartford?
Yeah, that would have been.
I really missed the Whalers.
The Whale.
I thought that was
the
a
Whale
bad
bag. We're moving these teams around.
You look back at the catastrophic failures of pro sports, name the pro sport, whatever. But the fact that the Whalers didn't stay in Hartford, when you think of like ESPN's reach. Mm-hmm. ESPN probably just ends up buying the Whalers at some point,
true.
Right?
Yeah.
And just, give John Skipper sitting in the owner's box, and we're throwing money around. Of course we're going to buy the Whalers. And I don't know how that didn't happen.
Yeah, and they even now ironically.
Could have moved them to Bristol?
Yeah, they now wear ESPN's colors, do the Canes. Yeah.
I know.
Make a nice little uniform change, and that
we should own a team. I'm all for owning a team. At the very least, we should buy the D League.
How far off is that? Yeah, I mean, it's a natural now. Yeah, and then get into the NFL. Put a team in now that ESPN's in LA too. They can have the NFL franchise.
When the game ran long last night, and at what point did you realize that you just weren't going to see sports soup and that they were going to have to rerun it another time?
Well, I fortunately I have so many banked up on the TV.
Oh, you did? You just watch the old ones?
I like to get through them. Really the nuance of it, I like to watch each one about a dozen times each, because every time you find something new that's funny about it.
Oh man,
good stuff. Good stuff.
Hey,
speaking of TiVo, answer me this. On a night like last night, as a matter of fact, I've been talking about this the last week or so, with these NBA playoff games and the
I was just saying this. I know where you're going. Go ahead.
Well, just like when there's a big movie that comes out, and if there's something that happens within the movie that is secret, like Sixth Sense came out, and you don't want to tell everybody what happened, there's always that one guy who hasn't seen it yet, and it's like 3 weeks. The movie's been out for 6 weeks now, and at some point there's the cutoff. Listen, we're going to talk about the movie, and you've had enough time to go and see this movie that we're not, the guy says, hey, don't tell me what happens because I haven't watched it yet, Well, guess what? The window has expired now for you. Too bad for you. Same thing with sports. Don't you think we need new rules because now we can watch games on TiVo? I get a lot of text messages and emails and stuff, and I haven't watched the game yet, because of I have the 2 little kids now. So I can't watch them live every time, especially on the West Coast. The game started at 4. Sometimes I don't get to sit down to start watching until a few hours later. So do we need new rules about when you can text people like, hey, hey, nice win or nice goal or something like that?
Rules?
Yeah. Spoiler rules.
It's too tough because you don't know when how do you know? Maybe maybe the texting companies could come out with some sort of thing where you could alert your friends who might text you.
Interesting.
So basically you just type in like 4045 and the text would say, Dave has not watched tonight's Penguins game. Please do not text him until he texts you.
I like that. That
That'd be
could
cool.
work. Because, I feel like, and I'm not asking for 48 hours or anything, but I'm saying, maybe should it be midnight? Should that be the cutoff? If I haven't watched the game by midnight of the day the game was played?
Midnight's fair.
West Coast time kind of thing. I don't know. I feel like I'm too often I hear the phone, I look at it, and I see what a goal that was, and now things are spoiled for me.
I thought you were going another direction there.
Oh, which is what?
Well, it really bugs me how TiVo and DirecTV DVR.
Oh, I know what you're saying. Yeah, cuts it off, right?
Really, Celtics Magic's going to go from 4 to 6:30?
That's right. Yeah, I know.
When time and time again we've established that the game is ending at like 6:40.
Yeah, but
and just over and over again, the game's getting cut off. I had that Celtics Bulls double over. First of all, how do they not have the technology to just think on the fly? Oh, this went into overtime. We send a signal.
Exactly,
now we've stretched it from 4 to 7:30.
Isn't your TiVo now just chock full of these things? I mean, I'm watching on Versus now, so these NHL games, and so I have now, like you say, I have Sports Soup. I have to save
or
that.
rodeo, yeah, rodeo finals
and MMA stuff. And
I
all
hate
that
it.
Stuff. Just I have 7 hours blocked off every night of every game.
Here's why this bugs me, because I had saved Bulls Celtics Game 6 just because I thought it was an awesome game. Mm-hmm. So I'm half asleep the other morning, and my DVR and DirecTV gets filled up. And I'm deleting, and I see like Trailblazers Rockets. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not going to watch that. Delete it. And then I realize after that I've just deleted the first and second overtimes of Game 6 of Bulls Celtics because that spilled into Trailblazers Rockets. It's unacceptable.
Yeah, that's terrible.
F you, DVR and TiVo. Really? How hard would it be to how does this happen with American Idol?
A correction does need to be made. You're right.
American Idol, they're taping live. The show runs 10 minutes long. They completely miss Adam Lambert's performance like 4 weeks ago, who's the star of the show. Everyone watching at home, Adam Lambert is like the money shot of the show, basically. It ends.
Well, and here's the other thing that happens with this TiVo thing, too, specifically. I don't know if you've experienced this one yet, which is that you are watching, let's say you have it on ESPN, and you're watching it, you're 45 minutes behind the game in real time, and you have ESPN on the TV. Then you go to the TiVo and you start watching the recorded event. Then it ends because they don't have enough time set there. You say 2.5 hours blocked off. So then while you have to jump to the thing, you had the foresight to also record the event behind it, like the Trailblazers game, for instance.
Right.
You have that set. But once the first one ends, as you make the transition to the next one, it goes back to the live programming, and it's on SportsCenter, and they're talking about the game, and the Celtics have already won it. I've had that experience. That's outrageous, too.
Well, how about this? Why not for sporting events, come up with some cursor or whatever when you're picking, supersize me, stretch me to an extra 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I just think it's such a pain in the ass to have to click on change settings. Now I have to decide, do I want to extend this for an hour? Yes, I do. Save changes. This should all be one button. It's 2009.
listen, everybody's talking about how the economy is struggling and everything. You and I, in the last however long we've been talking, have now offered some things that really could create a boon for several things. NHL should really benefit from this. Yeah. Now the cell phone, if they implement technology. Your thing,
urinals, walls, urinals with the wall. Mm-hmm. Let's wrap this one up. We'll call this part 1 hockey. We'll run this today, and then let's also tape a part 2 because Game 7 Houston Lakers and Game 7 Orlando Boston is not till Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
So conceivably, we could run part 2 on Sunday morning.
Oh, and let me say this. I have to plug ESPN.com page 2. The daily podcast that I do is up there.
Dameshek on Demand.
Dameshek on Demand.
All right, and we'll plug it also in part 2.
Wonderful.
Be 2 plugs for the price of 1.
And 710ESPN.com if you choose to go that way.
So that's the end of part 1 with Dave Dameshek, who was not on the Subway Fresh Take hotline because he was live in the studio. Back with part 2, NBA playoffs, a little bit later. Thanks.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.